What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, and this is your go-to place for all things Lions related. That includes news, updates, analysis, and so much more. If this is your first time here at the POD channel, please do me the biggest favor and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Both of those things help out the channel immensely, but it also makes it so much easier for you to find our content whenever we decide to upload new videos or decide to go live over here on YouTube as well as on Twitch. So in case, again, you want a different place to be able to watch, you can have the option between YouTube or Twitch. We typically live stream on both platforms. With that said, today we are going to be kicking off a brand new series kind of type of thing where basically we're going to be looking at draft profiles of a number of different prospects that are going to be in this 2025 draft. This is something that I've had a big passion to be able to do for the last couple. This is something that I've really wanted to do ever since I joined POD last year. And unfortunately, with the Lions making such a deep playoff run last year, wasn't really able to do it. But this year we do have a little bit more time, and I want to be able to at least highlight a couple of different players in this draft that could be targets for the Lions, primarily in the first round, but we may also, again, take a look at some players that are available in the second, third, so on and so forth, deeper in the draft as well. And that's where you can really get involved in this series. Is as I'm going through these film studies, feel free to jump into the comment section. Go ahead and shout out some of the players that you would like to see us do film studies on, and I will make sure to kind of keep a running list of those players and try to get them worked in. Again, the goal is to have at least 2 to 3 of these a week. We'll see how well I am at kind of keeping up with that. It's also important to keep in mind I am going to be doing profiles of several different players in several different position groups. Yes, there will be position groups that I probably won't focus on, primarily looking at like running back or quarterback, but there's also important to keep in mind that the Lions have a number of needs across the board. So in a video like today, where you're seeing that we're going to focus on wide receiver Jayden Higgins out of Iowa State, you may sit here and be like, well, why are we focusing on a wide receiver when the Lions have bigger needs on the defensive line or particularly on the offensive line? Well, it's always important to keep in mind that the Lions do still have needs at a position like wide receiver as well. When you look at the fact that they only have 3 returning contributors from this past season, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Khalif Raymond are the only guys that are guaranteed to return next year. Tim Patrick is a free agent, and while the Lions may very well go out and try to re-sign Tim Patrick, it's always important to keep in mind that he does and will have other options to go play at other teams, and maybe even offered a bigger contract to have a bigger role on another team. It's also important to keep in mind, if that were to happen, the Lions don't really have your prototypical X wide receiver on the roster. And that was a pretty big need for them going into the season, as we saw looking back at last offseason, as they brought in Tim Patrick and Allen Robinson, and they even decided to keep Donovan Peoples-Jones on the practice squad. Like, they were consistently trying to have an option to play that prototypical X receiver role. So it's very likely that they could go into the draft and still be looking to find that long-term solution, because obviously they have Amon-Ra St. Brown locked up for the next few years. Jameson Williams is going into a season where he's going to have to either have his 5th-year option picked up or again have his contract extended as well. And so outside of those two, you don't really have much at the wide receiver for the long-term future. And so that's why wide receiver is still somewhat important. Again, through this series, I am going to be looking at other positions. So if you're sitting here just like, well, why aren't we talking about edge, or why aren't we talking about defensive tackle? Just hold your horses. We're going to get there. We're going to talk about those players as well. And if you, like I said, if you have specific, defensive tackle or edge players that you're just like, hey, I would love to see a deep dive into the film on these players, throw it in the comment section. I will make sure to, like I said, I'll check that out, keep a running list, and maybe that's the next player that I may do a video on. So with that said, let's go ahead and start talking about Iowa State wide receiver Jayden Higgins. Now, Jayden Higgins is the easiest way I can say it. He's your prototypical X wide receiver, standing at 6'4", 215 pounds. Like, he is a big guy, and it definitely benefits him in certain situations, and it also kind of takes away in some other situations when you start looking at things like explosiveness, or some of his route running at times. But he is definitely someone that I think the Lions could really focus on, or at least have on their radar going into the draft. For one reason, obviously, like outside of his production, there's another reason that the Lions could really look at Higgins as an option. And that is because the Lions recently hired assistant head coach and running backs coach Tyler Roell out of Iowa State. And so he is someone that's going to be coming into the Lions coaching staff that's going to be very familiar with a player like Higgins and is going to understand like what type of character he has, what type of work ethic does he have, and may be able to help on the offensive side in understanding where he would be able to fit into this offense. Now, going to the stats side of things, again, Jayden Higgins had a very good college career. He's coming out as a senior, played all 4 years, 2 years at Eastern Kentucky, where again, started getting some playing time as a freshman, put up pretty good numbers, 29 receptions, 394 receiving yards for 3 touchdowns. He plays his second year still at Eastern Kentucky, has a much better season in terms of production when you talk about 58 receptions for 757 yards and 10 touchdowns. From there, he transfers over to Iowa State, and the next 2 years, again, he just continues this trajectory of constantly improving year after year, even against what some may say is stiffer competition. He went into Iowa State 2023, 53 receptions, again, a little bit down from his last season at Eastern Kentucky, but again, able to get way more production out of those 53 receptions for 983 yards, 6 touchdowns, about 18 and a half yards per reception, and was averaging about 75 yards per game. So again, going from Eastern Kentucky to Iowa State, immediately kind of hitting the ground running and really finding and developing into a really high quality X wide receiver in that system. 2024, this most recent season with him coming out, 87 receptions, 1,183 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. Again, the yards per receptions kind of take a dip into so he's back at 13.6. But then again, yards per game jumps up to about 91 yards per game. So really, again, started imposing his will on the game. And I think that really does speak to just the various strengths that he has, because again, with a lot of these prospects, we're going to talk about things that they do well. We're also going to talk about some of the things that at least I see when watching the film and like things that I think they don't do as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into this first play with Jayden Higgins, where we can kind of talk about some of the things he does well. And one of the things that I think he does well is that he does have, even though he's a more prototypical X wide receiver, he does run a pretty varied route tree. The first route that we're going to see here is kind of a bit of a corner route, and he does a really good job of getting off the line, finding the soft spot in the zone, and really just opening up to the quarterback and making himself available for this reception. So again, nice little corner route, finds the soft spot, is able to, strong hands and just kind of be able to complete this catch here. And that's something that the Lions love to have in their offense. Again, even if you're going to be a quote unquote prototypical X, they want you to be able to run the entire route tree. They don't want you to just be a guy that can only run go routes or only run deep posts or only be able to run slants. Like, you have to be able to run the entire route tree, because that's what's going to allow their offense to still be so difficult to really kind of contain and really be predictable or be unpredictable in those situations. Now, another thing that I do want to highlight when it comes to Jayden Higgins is also, again, something that's more so on a negative that I did see in some of his routes. Like I said, in that corner route, he did a really good job of, again, finding the space in the zone, being able to run a fairly difficult route because you have to make so many cuts. But one of the things that I did see in some of his other routes, and this is a good example of it right here, which is going to be a deep post route, is that that's not always a consistent thing with his route running. Sometimes his routes, or sometimes he gets a little, I don't know if lazy is the word to say, or maybe it's just a lack of explosiveness because of the size that he's playing at. Again, with him being 6'4", 215, it's maybe not fair to be able to expect him to cut on a dime, but he's up here at the top of the screen, and you're going to see him run this post. And while he's not the target on this route, you just look at how he runs this route. And like I said, I don't know if this is necessarily a laziness thing or if this is just, again, a situation of him just not basically maybe having the agility to make this cut more, abrupt. But he kind of rounds off this post route, which makes it really easy for the corner to kind of close in on him. And if he were the target on this route, you're talking about a situation where this is probably easily broken up because he's not really getting the corner off balance in any way. This is literally just like, I'm going to round this off in front of you. And the corner is able to really, again, get his hips squared and be able to just kind of drive on this route here. So this is something that I think Higgins would definitely have to work on if and when he gets into the NFL. Now, another thing that I think the Lions are really going to like about Jayden Higgins is, again, to go along with that size that he has. He has really, really strong hands. So you're going to see him run this slant route here and really just like he just pluck the ball out of the air. And that's something, again, that you really have to have in this offense. Some of these route concepts that the Lions run are very, very quick. And if you're not able to get your hands up, secure the ball, and be able to turn up field, that's going to limit how often you get on the football field. If we go back to like Jamison Williams' first couple seasons in the NFL, like that was something that he really struggled with Jared Goff as well. It's like, hey, being able to pluck the ball out of the air and still be able to turn up the field and run. And so something that Higgins definitely already kind of seems to have in his game. And again, it really helps when he's, standing at 6'4", making himself such a big target, which would make him also like the biggest target in the Lions offense if he were to get drafted to this team, bigger than any of the tight ends, and like I said, definitely the biggest wide receiver that they would have. Now, another thing that I wanted to take a look at when it comes to Higgins, because this is very important if you're a Lions fan and if you understand how the Lions like their wide receivers to play, is how does he approach run blocking? And I can say after watching this Arizona State game, he's definitely a willing blocker. Like he's definitely somebody that's going to get in there, put a body on somebody and try to at least get them out of the way and really contribute to the run game. So you have him here at the top of the screen. He's able to get in front of the corner, get a little bit of a push on him. Again, this is something that I think he could probably get a little bit better at considering his size. He could definitely be more imposing in this way. And that's something that I think the Lions at least would look at on film and be like, okay, he's at least willing to do it. So you get him in the building. The concept of no block, no rock should really resonate with him. And I think it's something that he would immediately adopt. And like I said, with him being a bigger guy, him being in a room with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, two guys that are definitely some of the better blocking wide receivers in the NFL, I think that's something that you could definitely see him develop and still just, again, bring to the game and bring to this Lions roster from day. Now, another thing that you're going to want to see from Jayden Higgins, if you are drafting a guy of his size and his strength, is that you're expecting him to be like a go-to target in the red zone. And in this situation, I think this is where you can at least see how the Lions would like to use him and find some of these one-on-one matchups. I think he does a good job of at least, again, getting off the line and at least beating the corner initially. You could argue that maybe the quarterback could throw a better ball here to give Higgins a better chance at, just being able to make a play on the ball. Maybe you throw this higher, so it's more of a jump ball situation. I mean, the guy is 6'4", allow him to use that athleticism a little bit more. But this is also something that I will also say is a little bit of a weakness, that in some situations like this, he's not always the best at creating separation quickly off the line. And like I said, I think this may have something to do with, again, his size and speed type of ratio. This is something that Amon-Ra St. Brown does really well, of being able to win quickly off the line, and then he's able to create that separation and then win. Jayden Higgins doesn't necessarily need to do that, but he does need to be able to use his size better in these types of jump ball situations. And I think with a quarterback like Jared Goff, he would probably have a few more better opportunities to be able to make these types of plays. And like I said, with him having strong hands as well, you could see him being in this offense, speaking of the Lions offense, and being able to make more and more of these types of plays, in the regular season. So those are just a couple of plays that we're looking at here when it comes to Jayden Higgins. Like I said, some of the positives when you look at him as a prospect, he has great prototypical size for an X wide receiver. Again, 6'15". You really would love to have a guy like that in your offense to be able to really impose your will, specifically in the red zone. But seeing also how the Lions typically use their quote unquote X wide receivers, he does a lot of those things in terms of running, being able to run slant routes, being able to run like those deep posts and corner routes. He's very familiar with those types of things. He's also has a very diversified route tree. Like we said, we saw him run a corner route, we saw him run a slant route, we saw him also run a deep post. In that game, he runs several other routes as well. He runs digs. He also lines up not just exclusively at the X, they also line him up in the slot quite a bit, not a ton, but enough to, again, allow there to be some variance. And so at least he understands what he's supposed to do if he's lined up in the slot, or if you ask him to play closer to the line of scrimmage or play closer to the tackle in certain situations. So he's very familiar with doing those things as well. He's also a willing blocker, which is something that is very crucial if you're going to play on a Dan Campbell led team. You have to be willing to block, because that is such a huge part of this team's identity. Going back to some of the negatives, I think his route running is a little consistent at times. I think there are times where you can find games where he looks very explosive out of his cuts. And then there are some other games where you're just like, man, he doesn't seem to be putting the same type of oomph And with that said, I think there is a little bit of a question of effort. And I don't know if this is more so just him conserving energy because he knows the play's not coming his way or if it's not coming his side. But I do think he could work a lot harder in scramble drills. There's a number of plays in this Iowa State versus Arizona State championship game where his quarterback is trying to extend a play. And I think you would just love to see him as a big body receiver working, a little bit harder to get into the view of his quarterback and making himself available as a target to see if they can kind of extend some of those plays. Another thing that's also something to kind of, again, a little bit of a weakness is that despite his big size at 6'4", 215, he doesn't necessarily come across as a speedster, specifically watching this game. I'll have to go back and check some of the other games as well. But he doesn't like jump off the screen of like in terms of explosive or someone that's going to be, a true deep threat in the sense of you're running him a ton of like go routes and fade routes types of situations. He's someone that is able to run those intermediate to mid-range routes. He can run those deep routes because again, he's averaged over 13 yards per reception throughout his college career. So it's not that he can't stretch the field, but it's just not in the explosive way. I think it would be something that you would like to see him very much in the Tim Patrick, Josh Reynolds role that the Lions have used those types of players in, where again, you're running a lot of deep posts, post corner routes, dig routes, those types of things where he can get open, be a big target for Jared Goff over the middle of the field or even against the sideline and make some of those tough catches. So that's essentially Jayden Higgins in a nutshell. I think he's a really interesting prospect, someone that I'm definitely excited to dive more into the film with and see exactly where he's going to slot. Again, the Lions don't have a pressing need at wide receiver, but if they start to get deep into the draft and there's not the availability of an edge rusher that they feel is impactful, and there's not any offensive linemen there that they feel are really going to contribute to this team as well, wide receiver is a position that could be, highly considered. And I think Jayden Higgins is someone that could definitely be warranting of that consideration. But those are just my thoughts and my opinions. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you guys think of Jayden Higgins as a prospect? What do you think about him possibly being a pick for the Detroit Lions? Also, if it's not Jayden Higgins, what's another wide receiver that you think would be a good fit for this Lions team and that would gel well with this new offense that we're going to be seeing now that Ben Johnson has moved on to the Chicago Bears? Would really love to hear what you guys are thinking there. And like I said at the top of this video, if there are players at other positions that you would love to see a film study on, drop those in the comment section as well. We're definitely going to be taking a look at those and trying to figure out what other players that you guys are interested in seeing and what you and who you want to learn more about, prior to the draft happening. So with all that said, I'm Miko. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, like this video if you did in fact find this very helpful and informative. And like always, you can check out prideofdetroit.com for any more additional draft profiles or any more information on the draft as a whole and how it pertains to your Detroit Lions. So with all that said, thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.